I just want to share some verses from the Bible with you that I believe are key in having a stronger Christian experience. This is what I was led into because of beginning to examine myself and to search. And I want to begin with John 12, verses 24 and 25. And I just want to remind us that if you have any question or any thought, please, there's the opportunity for you to share it. John 12, 24 and 25. And I'm going to ask a question before we read this verse. What is the key? What is the key to fully living the life of Christ? Because we live the life of Christ, but I'm using this word fully. I'm trying to look at the extreme, the superlative, fully living that life of Christ. What is the key? I believe there is a key, and I believe it's just for us to take a hold of this key and step into what the Lord says. He says, "Verily, verily, or truly, truly, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. He that loveth his life shall lose it. But he that hateth his life in this world shall keep it unto life eternal." Now, Jesus says that if you want to live, you have to die. Jesus says that if you want to bear fruit, you have to die. He uses an extreme word, but he's not alone. You find that the Apostle Paul uses this word many times too, die. Why do the most inspired people choose the most extreme word to describe the Christian experience? Why doesn't he say you need to become weak? Or he doesn't even say you need to adjust your thinking. He says you need to die. That's what I want to find out, because death is an extreme condition. And nobody wants to die. But Jesus says this is what it really means if you want to live and if you want to bear fruit. I'm going to read a few more things, a few more statements concerning this in just a moment. But I want to ask first, and maybe somebody can venture an answer. Why is this necessity of dying? Why is it that it is often overlooked among Christians? Why don't Christians recognize how extreme we need to be in our efforts to live the Christian life? Why is it that Christians don't come to grips with this? Can you suggest a reason? I'm going to suggest something. I think it's because we don't understand what sin is. I think our definition of sin is too limited. How do most people define sin? By the law. They say sin is the what? Transgression of the law. So when you think of what is wrong, you think of 10 statements. Isn't that right? You think of 10 things in which you might offend God. Yes, Sister Caroline. Separation from God is a far more comprehensive and accurate understanding of it. But I'm going to show you why this wrong understanding of sin results in us continuing to live our lives and think it is okay. Because you see, if sin is the transgression of the law, if that is the only definition, I agree it is a part of the definition. But I object to the idea that it is the only definition. I think sin is far more than doing 10 things. I think sin is a condition, as Sister Caroline said, of separation from God. Because what is wrong is not what you do. What is wrong is what you are. Why did Jesus say you have to die if you are only doing 10 wrong things? Change those 10 things, right? Adjust those 10 things and you'll be okay. But no, Jesus says that is not good enough. He says what is required is that you die. Because it's not just the 10 things that are wrong. It's your entire existence that is a problem. That's what Christ is trying to say. And that's why I'm trying to make the connection here, because I'm saying if you don't understand properly what sin is, you will never be able to come to grips with the problem of sin. You'll never be able to understand why you're not the Christian you should be. You give God a part of your existence, but you keep the rest for yourself. That is the reason why people don't understand the need to truly die. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a moment, but let's go on. You see, so you end up with people having in their lives two different agendas. You have my agenda, and you have God's agenda. And God's agenda is the 10 statements. My agenda is the rest of my life, right? My life is primarily mine. It's mine to live and to advance for my pleasure. But I realize that God needs a part of it. And God's part of my life is defined by the 10 statements and maybe 1/7 of my time, 1/10 of my money, 10 commandments, and that defines my relationship to God. So we see our relationship to God in terms of our behavior in certain things. I've been married for 40 years. No, 37.
Better get it right.
Better get it right. Now that's one of the things I discovered in 37 years. My wife doesn't want to leave any part of my life alone. She wants to be involved in everything. And at first I was kind of resentful. When I was young and inexperienced, I thought it could work. I wanted to keep a bit of myself for myself and give a part of it to my marriage. And I discovered that there was a lot of friction. I wanted to still be part bachelor. And I found it was causing friction all the time. Now, after 37 years, I'm beginning to learn. Okay? But, look, sometimes she takes over everything. Right? If I put down my stuff, she moves it somewhere else. If we're going out, everything. It's pervasive. But I've learned enough to say, well, that's marriage. You have to adjust. You will never again be the person you were before you got married. It comes at the territory. And I'm learning. So I'm saying that if this is true in marriage, it is no less true in the relationship with Christ. Yet the concept that many Christians have is that a part of it belongs to God and the rest is mine. Yes, Dennis?
Yeah, when you got married, you have to come to the point of dying to that mindset of being a bachelor.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so will your wife. But some people learn, and some people get divorced. You either learn or you go back to your separate ways. I think I'm glad that I learned. But
I think it works both ways.
Of course.
I've been married a long time. I can be the authority.
Yes. So, whenever you have this kind of dissection in your life, you tend to have the idea that, look, my life is mine, but I have to sacrifice something for the other person. When you think of this as a kind of sacrifice, what is your attitude towards it? It's kind of like you resign yourself to it, but there's a little bit of resentment because of it. There's a little bit of reluctance because it's like you're giving away something that is good and that you would like to have, but because of the other person's requirement, you are giving it up. And if you think of marriage again, that kind of attitude leads to friction. It leads to uneasiness between the two parties. It has to be that way also if that is your attitude in a Christian walk. You think, I work for this money. I work for this thing. It's mine. Okay, God requires 1/10 or whatever it is that you think He requires, but I give it, but it's mine. God, I'm doing something for you. I hope you appreciate it. I hope you understand the sacrifice this is costing me. So you are doing an action, but your heart is not a part of that action. Your action is, your heart is saying, I'm giving this because I must or because you require it, but you feel like it is something of yours that you are giving away to another person. God does not possess your life. He possesses your tent. So I'm saying you can apply this to the Sabbath, you can apply this to the 10 Commandments. What I'm saying is this idea of dissecting your life into pieces where most of it belongs to you and God gets His part is a terrible perspective. And it's a perspective that results in Christianity being very difficult for you. Jesus was harsh in some of his statements, but it was because it was necessary. He says some things that if you have to understand what he's saying. But even then, when you understand, it is so all-embracing. I'm going to read one of them shortly. It is so all-encompassing that it's very challenging to even accept it. And I think many people don't, and that's the reason why we're in the place we are today. Now, Jesus identifies the problem, and I want us to read again something that he said in Luke 14. We're going to go to Luke 14 and read about 3 verses there. I'm going to read 26 and 27 and then 33. In fact, I'd like to get us involved a little bit. So would somebody read verses 26 and 27 for me?
If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sister, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple.
All right, I always think when I read this passage that Jesus is such an extremist. I think probably the word I would use today is fanatic. Because you have to be a fanatic to say things like this, that a man must hate father, mother, wife, children. Come on. Why does he have to be so extreme? I know I've been accused at times of being an extremist. And when you're called an extremist, it's not a good word normally. But you are usually called an extremist because you don't leave room for compromise. You say the thing and you don't leave room for compromise. And I like that kind of life. I don't know about the rest of us, but I kind of like when things are black and white because then you know exactly where you stand. Gray areas leave you confused. But Jesus was like that. He was a black and white person, wasn't he? Now when he says you are to hate father, mother, sister, brother, wife, children, and your own life also, is he talking about the emotion of hatred? No, absolutely not. That's the point. Jesus is not saying that we are to feel that emotion of hatred towards our loved ones. Jesus says we are to love our enemies, didn't he? So how could he mean we are to hate our family? But when he says we are to hate, what is he really talking about? Can somebody suggest an answer? It means he's talking about dying. Yes.
Dying in terms of giving up yourself totally, your will, your ambitions, whatever your desires, and giving fully in that respect, ultimately.
The Apostle Paul says, but now we are delivered from the law. Paul gives the idea that we are dead to the law. What does he mean by that? He means that when you die to something, you no longer are responsive to that thing. Let me use the word die. Jesus uses the word hate. How do you treat something when you hate it?
Stay away as far as
you keep as far from it as possible. So is Jesus saying you are to abandon your wife, abandon your parents, brothers and sisters? No. But there's another way of abandoning without actually leaving. It is to take what belongs to you and give it absolutely into the control of somebody else. The word absolute is a very strong word. It's as strong as the word cannot. Jesus says there's a certain thing we need to do, and if we don't do it, we cannot be his disciples. And the word cannot means what? It's impossible, right? So when he says hate mother, father, sister, brother, he's saying that you need to treat them in such a way as though they are no longer yours. You are to divorce yourself from that relationship where you see them as yours. And why? Because mother, father, sister, brother, houses, lands are what constitute my life. Just stop for a moment and think of the things that are closest and dearest to you. Just stop a moment and consider. What is it that turns you on when you get up in the morning? What is it that moves your thoughts as you go through the day? What comes most readily to mind constantly? That is your life. That's what your life consists of. And usually, Jesus gave us a sampling of some of the things that really constitute our lives. Our loved ones, our houses, lands, our possessions, our own life. This is what we live for. And when he says hate it, he means to come to the place where we are in a relationship with these things where they no longer are the reason for our existence. We have chosen to give them away. Now, if you don't understand what he's saying, it sounds like an extreme thing. Why would I give away my husband, my wife, my parents, my house and land to somebody else? Only if I trust that person so implicitly that I know that that person can do a better job than I have been doing. Even with my own life. Have you ever learned, have we all learned that you are not qualified to run your own life? That's the greatest lesson anybody can ever learn. If I thank God for anything, I thank him for this more than anything else. I thank God that I'm one person on this planet. I thank God from my heart. I'm one person who has learned I cannot trust myself. I can't manage my life. God knows of all the things I ever learned. That is the greatest thing I ever learned. I wish that I could never ever forget for even a moment. Because I learned that truth. I'm not qualified to run my life. Anybody can look at my life. Anything good you see there is not due to Dejvid Klejton. That's the truth as the Lord lives. But I learned that lesson. And I learned that lesson by hard failures, bitter disappointments. A time when I became a Christian, it was because I was contemplating suicide. Because I was messing up everything. Life was just so meaningless. And I believe that's where what Jesus means, we should come to that point. When he says that a man must hate his own life also, he means that we need to come to the place where we recognize that I myself, my entire existence, I'm not qualified to run my life. So I'm giving away everything that pertains to my existence, everything. I can't manage it. Look here. I don't even know how to deal with my wife properly. If I follow my own mind, I'm in contention with her all the time. Don't you know? I don't even know how to make my wife happy. I need his direction to teach me how to deal with her. So I can't hang on to her. I need to give her away. I need to give that responsibility away to God. I have been the means that God has used to provide for her for 37 years, right? She has been a wife, a stay-at-home mother, then a wife. I've been the one that God has used to. Do you think I'm taking care of her? If I once get that idea in my mind, I'm in trouble. I myself have been provided for by the Lord. He provides for her by that means. She's not mine, she's his. She's more his than she is mine. I'm simply the tool that he has used to provide for her. That perspective is what Jesus is asking us to give. He's saying, I want you to come to acknowledge that there's nothing that you possess that is yours. I want you to come to the place where you recognize that you are not qualified to live this life. Somebody else has to live it. If you come to this place, you can be my disciple. If you don't, you cannot be my disciple. You will always be one man trying to serve two masters. And that is why he says in verse 33 of the same Luke chapter 14. So likewise, whosoever he be of you that forsaketh not what? All that he hath. He cannot be my disciple. Notice the word that he uses, forsake. Forsake means to give up. To do what? To give up, right? To give away. So, like I say, he's not saying, David, you need to get up and abandon your wife. You need to go and become a missionary and leave your home and leave your children. No. I need to trust that when I say, God, I give up my quest to take care for my wife and to take care of life and to meet my needs and to do. I give it up to you. I give it to you. I confess I don't know anything. Lord, take control. And then he might say, look, I want you to stay with your wife and to continue to take care of her. Or I want you to continue to go to your job or to do what you're doing. But guess what? You used to go to work for David's sake. Now you're going to work for Jesus' sake. It's a difference. You know, I heard a statement. It rings in my mind. I'll never forget it. I was listening to a sermon and the man said, He quoted somebody. You know what he said? He said, God comes to you disguised as your life. That is profound and it is deep. Maybe you don't quite get what it is saying. God comes to you disguised as your life. In other words, I've heard people ask a question many times, how can I keep God with me all the time? I mean, when I'm praying, it's fine. When I'm studying the Bible, it's good. When I am actually having a Bible study or I'm in a religious service, I can keep my mind on God. But when I go to work, it's different. You don't know the people that I meet and the circumstances and the boss always nagging at me or something. It's hard to maintain my focus on God. You know why? Because you have gone to work as you. You have gone to your job as you. You have gone to your job to do your job. You have not given that job and your existence to God. When you go to that workplace, it is Christ going to that workplace, and he's not going there to make money. He's going there to represent God. And that consciousness and that awareness is always before your mind. Why? Because you have chosen to give everything to God. You have chosen to die. You have chosen not to live. Your awareness of yourself is entirely different. You are a different person, and so you are living a different life. So every act of your life is an act of worship. So it's not just when you're having a Bible study that you worship. Every act of your life is worship because God is constantly manifesting himself through everything that you do. Every word that you speak, every book that you look at, every person that you encounter, God is manifesting himself. That's what the statement means. God comes to you disguised as your life. It's a profound and beautiful statement, and I'm really trying to remember it, you know. It's God acting through you. Don't wait for a sign from heaven. Don't wait until you hear a voice like a trumpet speaking in your ears or you're studying the Bible. He's disguised as your life. It's only, are you seeing him? Have you given him that opportunity? That's what it means. That's the question. So, many Christians have the idea that what we need to do is to choose God's way instead of my way. But I'm saying it goes deeper than this. It's not God's way or my way. It's God's life versus my life. It's not your behavior that God wants. It's your existence. It's not change in certain aspects of how I perform. It's who I am that God wants. Having a piece of you, God is not going to be able to make you what he wants you to be. He wants everything because only if he has everything can he make and shape you into what he wants you to be. That's the really important point that I want to make. And I'm saying that when we believe that our problem is only limited aspects of our behavior, like sin is only the transgression of the law, we never come to grips with the real problem. The problem is me. The problem is who I am and my mindset and how I live and how I view life. It's everything about me that is wrong. So God says the only way you can be really free, you have to take everything uncompromisingly and give it to me. And I will live your life for you. I'll make your choices. I'll decide who you marry. I'll decide where you go to school. I'll decide what job you do. I'll decide everything about your life. Because the fact why you're having problems and why you cannot be what I want you to be is because I am not able to have control of your life. You only want to give me 10 parts. That is the problem. And unless we recognize that and come to grips with that, we cannot be his true disciples. We will never again see biblical Christianity until we come to that place. It might be said that the issue is self-will versus God's will. Some people say it's a matter of the will. But it's not about the will. I say again, it's about the identity. It's about the identity, not the will. If I'm alive and exercising the will of God, what a struggle! Have you ever tried to come to grips with trying to do the right thing yourself? Man, I have never been a very disciplined person from when I was a boy, so maybe I feel it more acutely than others. I feel the need for God more. I have been the kind of person like this that if I get up in the morning and I know I should pray, and sometimes a voice says, just check your email. Quick. I quick touch my email. instead of praying first. That discipline is not inborn. So I can't afford for a moment to give even a little leeway to self. But you have some people who are very disciplined. And sometimes it's a deception. That strict discipline deceives them into thinking they're Christians when they are simply disciplined sinners. You have some very disciplined people who have still not given themselves to God, and it's harder for them because they think that their discipline and their self-control is Christianity. But Christianity is not about what you do, I say again. It's about the identity. Who is really living? Is it me or is it Christ? What we all need is not the right will. It's not even God's will in terms of behavior. What we need is God's identity. We need a new person living inside of us. We need to become the new creation where it is Christ who lives and not I. We need to stop focusing on behavior and focus on who we are. Now, we go to another statement of Jesus, and we're probably just going to wrap up this section in just a moment. We go to Matthew. Go to Matthew 6. And we'll read verses 22 to 24. It says, the light of the body is the eye. That's 22 to 24. Matthew 6. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Now, the word mammon is often interpreted to mean money or goods, worldly goods. But I'm looking at it a little differently here. When I look at the whole passage and I look at the overall context of what Jesus says, I'm understanding mammon here to be symbolic of not just your goods, but of yourself. Because most people think that the two masters are God and Satan. But I'm telling you that if Satan should die tomorrow, and all the evil angels should die tomorrow, you would still have a problem. It's not Satan why we commit sin. He was the original cause. But the cause of sin in you and me today is not Satan. When we were born, Satan was not living in us. The problem is that the world lies under, the world has accepted and lives by the principles of Satan. Not Satan himself, but his principles. The principle of Satan is self-government. God's principle is God government. Satan said, you can be independent of God and you can be like God yourself. And that's a principle that the world lives under. When a man recognizes the folly of it, he will go to the Lord and says, give me your spirit, give me your government, live and rule in my life. That's when he becomes free. But the world does not live this way, and many Christians won't live this way. Jesus says, you can't serve two masters. It's an impossibility. Now he says, the light of the body is the eye. Some translations word it this way. The window of the body is the eye, which is more accurate. Because he says, if your window is turned towards a source of light, the room will be full of light. But if you have one window, and it's turned towards darkness, you can't have any light in the room, can you? So Jesus is talking about what is it that is the focus of our existence. And he said, if it's turned to light, your entire body, your whole room, everything in you will be light. Because the problem is not the individual pieces. The problem is, what is the source of all your existence? So he says, you cannot serve God and mammon. You can't serve God and self. You're going to love one and hate the other. It can't happen otherwise. It's an impossibility. So if you live, it's certain that Christ is going to get the crumbs. Because you can't serve two masters. And you think that you are giving Christ something because, look, you have made such a sacrifice. Everything is wrong. The whole system is wrong. Your whole thinking is wrong. You can't ever be a Christian by giving God crumbs, because the point is you are not qualified to live your life. You are not qualified to serve God. If it's not God all the way, if He's not everything, if God and Jesus is not everything in your life, you are not a disciple of Christ. That's the point. Jesus emphasized this so many times. He says, look here, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest. Take my yoke. And when you are yoked to a stronger person, what does it mean? Anywhere he goes, you have to go. He says, give yourself away. It's like this little boy. Well, he's a little too big. He's 8 years old. It's like my grandson, who is 3 years old. Every little child begins to manifest some rebellion at different stages, but he's still a good little boy. Very obedient, very happy, the joy of my life. He doesn't think about what he's going to eat. He doesn't think about what he's going to eat. He doesn't think about going to the toilet even. He just says, want to wee-wee. The chim appears. Somebody comes to take off his clothes. Quick, quick, quick. He's perfectly happy. Somebody comes to wipe him afterwards. Not a care in the world. He understands rest. Poor me. I am 63. I have to be taking care of this body, this wife, the house, the this, the that. It's turning my hairs grey. And guess what? I'm not qualified at all. In Jamaica, where we live, and everywhere in the world, right now in America, everybody is in a panic because they never know where ISIS will strike, right? The government has alarmed you, the news has alarmed you, the world is hanging under a cloud, nobody knows what is going to happen. Jamaica, crime is on the increase. Our neighbor next door, the house got broken into. Another neighbor over the hill, they held up somebody at gunpoint. Just a little bit up the hillside, they shot a guy up at a shop up there. Then a little further up, they chopped a guy to pieces. My wife, I noticed she started turning on lights in the house at night. No, leaving the lights on, and the back light needs to be on. And it's understandable because she's human, and you start to get a little tense when these things are happening. Who are you to run your life? What qualifications do you have? I don't even have a gun. I don't know karate. I am not a boxer. Who am I to take care of this life? Until we come to that place of understanding the truth about ourselves, we are unwilling to give ourselves away completely. But Jesus says the secret is to take my yoke and you will find rest. That's what he promises. True rest comes from being a baby again. True rest comes from being what the world despises. The world despises dependence. The world says, be independent, be strong, be a man. Oh yes? That's what the world thinks. Well, I agree that in a certain context, you need to stop depending on your parents, but you need to come back to the place where, like a child, you recognize your limitations and recognize that you always need somebody. There's always one. This song is one of my favorite songs because of the words. It says, you were there when I drew the breath of life. And you heard my voice the first time that I cried. And though I couldn't see you, you were very near. And there's something now that I want you to hear. I will always be a child in your eyes. And when I need some love, your arms are open wide. And even when I'm growing old, I hope I'll realize I will always be a child in your eyes. Isn't it the truth? Isn't it what we need to always know and remember? It's good to know that I always have a father. It's good to know I have somebody who has got my back and my front and everywhere. He's looking after me, and furthermore, he wants to be everything to me. If only I can come to the place where I'm willing to let go and trust him. I believe that this is what God is aching to see in his children. People who trust him so much that they give themselves away completely. They don't make their decisions anymore. They don't choose for themselves anymore. Not just in 10 statements, but in every aspect of their lives. What you chose to put on this morning, what you chose to eat. Those little things, come on, Lord. Are you so invasive and interfering? Look, I don't want you to live your life anymore. I know what is good for you in every aspect. Do you trust me enough to believe that I want to be everything to you? And if you will accept that it is so, God promises that His glory will appear in your life. And there will be no difference between our Christianity today and the Christianity of 2,000 years ago. I have been blessed by looking at this, and I think God has strengthened me because of it. I found greater delight even in talking to Him since I started to look into this and to endeavor to live by it. It's a fight, because my mind is so conditioned to thinking otherwise. It's a fight because it requires an effort to focus on what is true. But it is worth the effort. And when you get it right, I tell you, Jesus is right when He says that you will find rest unto your souls. So I want to thank you for staying with me. You didn't have a lot to say, but you were very attentive, and I appreciate it.